What if one lie could launch a billion-dollar empire? One bold move, one fake company, and suddenly you're building the most iconic sports brand on the planet. This isn't just the story of Nike, it's the story of how a broke runner bluffed his way into history. In 1962, Phil Knight wasn't a mogul. He wasn't even sure who he was. Just a 24-year-old ex-runner with a business degree from Stanford and a crazy theory. What if Japanese sneakers could take down the giants of the shoe world? At that time, Adidas and Puma dominated the market. They were expensive, elite, untouchable. But Knight had been watching how Japanese companies like Canon and Toyota were disrupting cameras and cars. Why not shoes? He wrote a paper about it, a business idea on importing cheaper, high-performance Japanese sneakers to America. But for Knight, this wasn't just homework. It was a mission, and he decided to go for it. Knight booked a flight to Japan, alone, armed with nothing but ambition and one made-up name, Blue Ribbon Sports. It didn't exist, but when he sat down in the offices of Onitsuka Tiger, a Japanese shoe company, he told them it was real. He claimed to be the U.S. distributor of Blue Ribbon Sports and pitched them on selling their shoes in America. They believed him. Onitsuka agreed to send him samples, and when Knight got home, he had a problem. He didn't even have a company. So he called his old track coach from the University of Oregon, Bill Bowerman, a shoe-obsessed innovator who used to pour rubber into waffle irons, trying to make soles lighter and faster. Bowerman surprised him. He didn't just offer to help, he offered to become a partner. With $500 from Bowerman and $500 from Knight, they officially started Blue Ribbon Sports. Phil sold sneakers out of the trunk of his car at track meets. There was no office, no plan, just hustle, belief, and a weird obsession with making better shoes. But Knight wasn't just selling shoes. He was watching, learning, understanding what runners needed and what the industry wasn't giving them. And that's when something changed. Bowerman began tinkering with the Onitsuka designs, improving them. And Knight started thinking, why are we making someone else rich? A quiet fire was building. And soon Blue Ribbon Sports would make a decision that would ignite a global revolution. They would break away from Onitsuka. But going independent meant war. The battle was coming, but so was the birth of Nike. What do you do when your entire business turns against you? When the company that gave you your start suddenly tries to erase you? For Phil Knight, the answer was clear. You fight back. And in that moment of betrayal, Nike was truly born. By the early 1970s, Blue Ribbon Sports was thriving. Sales of Onitsuka shoes were booming, athletes were raving, and Knight's car trunk startup was growing fast. But something wasn't right. Onitsuka had started making backdoor deals with other American distributors, preparing to cut Knight out entirely. Knight saw it coming, and instead of begging to stay, he made the boldest move of his life. He decided to break away and launch his own brand. He needed a name, something simple, powerful, fast. One morning, an employee named Jeff Johnson called Knight at 7 a.m. with a strange idea he said came to him in a dream. Nike. It was the name of the Greek goddess of victory. Knight wasn't sold at first, but with no better options, they printed it on the boxes. The swoosh? It was drawn by a student named Carolyn Davidson. She was paid just $35. That was it. A name from a dream, a logo from a college kid, a company born in chaos. But they had something else. They had Bill Bowerman, the mad scientist of shoes. Bowerman began experimenting with rubber molds in his kitchen, trying to build a sole that could grip like nothing else. One day, he poured rubber into his wife's waffle iron. The result? A lightweight sole with revolutionary traction. It would go on to power the first Nike shoe, the Waffle Trainer. They didn't have fancy factories or marketing budgets. but they had innovation, grit, and a growing cult of runners who believed in them. Nike's first official shoe dropped in 1972, just in time for the Olympic trials. Athletes wearing Nike shoes began to win, and suddenly, the brand wasn't just new, it was powerful. But Knight knew product alone wouldn't be enough. He needed a brand, a movement, and that's when he changed the game forever. He began hiring ex-athletes, people who lived and breathed sports. He told them to build a company culture based on rebellion, risk-taking, and an obsession with performance. Nike became more than shoes. It became an identity. By the late 70s, the company was pulling millions in revenue. But there were lawsuits with Onitsuka, shipping issues, inventory failures, and mounting pressure to either scale or die. So Knight did something that terrified him. He took Nike public. The IPO raised over $20 million. Overnight, Nike had the fuel to go global. But success wasn't the goal. Victory was. And just around the corner, a partnership was coming. One that would define the brand, shape pop culture, and turn Nike into a global religion. What happens when a shoe brand signs a rookie and creates a legend? That's exactly what happened in 1984, when Nike took the biggest gamble in sports marketing history. The name? Michael Jordan. Back then, Jordan was just a promising NBA draft pick. He didn't even want to sign with Nike. He preferred Adidas. But Nike saw something. Not just an athlete, a phenomenon. They offered him a $2.5 million deal over 5 years, unheard of at the time. They gave him his own shoe line, and they designed a sneaker that would break the rules. The Air Jordan 1 launched in 1985, bold, black and red. Too bold, in fact. The NBA banned it for violating uniform policy. But Nike leaned into the controversy. They ran ads saying the NBA banned the shoe, but they can't stop you from wearing them. Kids went crazy. Sales exploded. Nike expected to sell $3 million worth in the first year. They sold $126 million. That one decision, to bet it all on Jordan, changed everything. Nike became more than a brand. It became culture, fashion, identity. Suddenly, sneakers weren't just for athletes, they were for everyone. From there, the empire expanded. Nike signed more icons: Bo Jackson, Andre Agassi, Serena Williams, Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods, LeBron James. They weren't just sponsoring talent, they were shaping it, telling stories that fused sport with struggle, glory, and grit. In 1988, Nike debuted a simple ad campaign, just 3 words, "Just do it." The phrase came from the final words of a death row inmate. Sounds dark? It was. But it worked. The slogan tapped into something primal, a message that resonated far beyond sports. Nike wasn't just making shoes anymore. They were making statements. But success came with criticism. There were scandals, accusations of sweatshops, public backlash, boycotts. And yet, the company adapted, shifted, grew. Today, Nike is worth over $150 billion, with influence stretching across continents, cultures, and generations. But underneath all that power is still the same energy that started it. A kid with an idea, a fake company, and a belief that he could change the game. Nike didn't just sell sneakers. It sold a feeling, a challenge, a victory. And it all began with one lie and one swoosh. Nike didn't just sell sneakers. It sold a feeling, a challenge, a victory. And it all began with one lie and one swoosh.